It's been a long time coming, but Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater is finally here. This is a remake, very faithful remake, I should add, to the 2004 classic from the PS2. And it's very much almost the same exact game you've grown to know and love, just remade in Unreal Engine 5 with some updated modern mechanics and camera controls. And when I say faithful, I mean it. This isn't just a modern Resident Evil remake situation where huge sections are reimagined or cut, especially like in 3. This is Snake Eater almost as you remember it, only polished for modern hardware. It's not unlike Ninja Gaiden 2 Black or the Oblivion remaster from earlier this year, so you might even call it a remaster as well, though I'd probably still call it a remake. But semantics aside, this is a great remake that keeps pretty much all the important stuff intact, and even includes all the side content from the original game too. The voice acting, the cutscenes, the animations, everything is virtually the same, down to the ladder climb scene. Honestly, if that didn't make a return, I wouldn't want it either. Though, according to some, the facial animations appear worse or different than they used to, but I disagree. It looks more or less the same to me. And honestly, the facial animations aren't really that important and aren't really what sold me anyway in this case, because admittedly, this is the first time I've played through this game from start to finish, and I loved it, even through its weirdness and camp and awkward dialogue. Although, to be fair, that is kind of the point. But yeah, that's right. I had only played a little of the original on the PS2 when I was little, but I never really got through it because I wasn't a fan of the controls. And so I was especially excited for this remake. And if for no one else, this remake is for me, and people like me. And that's not to say that you can't experience the original game without the original feel though, because the game actually has a legacy mode, which keeps the fixed camera and controls the same as they used to be, and even includes a legacy filter, making the game's tone more greenish and more true to the source material. Though it's unfortunate that the specific filter is locked behind that mode, but at least you have some others to experiment with. Before I get any further, I think it's worth remembering just why Snake Eater is so beloved in the first place. Back in 2004, it was groundbreaking, having survival mechanics like eating snakes and healing wounds, and having some of the most creative boss fights gaming had ever seen. From the end sniper duel to the Fury's chaotic flamethrower battle, these encounters were unforgettable, and they still are today. And of course, this was our first real look at the big boss's origin story, giving us much more weight to the entire series' future. Playing it now, over 2 decades later, I can say that all of that still holds up. But all that aside, this also makes me wonder if they'll start releasing more remakes in order of chronology instead, which I would love, and is probably why they labeled this as Delta instead of 3, also because Delta means change without difference in structure. But seeing Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 with the same sort of treatment, same coat of paint, maybe even the original 2 Metal Gears as well, though these, I would imagine, would have to undergo far faster changes. But Delta also preserves the weird and wonderful extras. The Snake vs. Monkey minigame makes a return, where you capture apes from Ape Escape, but now with a few friends from Astrobot thrown in as well. And yes, even Guy Savage is here. For those who don't know, that was originally just a teaser for a cancelled Konami game, I believe, so this weird little side mode and its remake are really the only glimpses we'll ever get. It's bizarre, but that is part of the charm, just as everything else is. Now, allow me to address the elephant in the room. So you've probably heard, or at least seen, the latest controversy surrounding this game, specifically the performance side of things through Digital Foundry's review of the game running on the PS5 and the PS5 Pro. Now, if you've seen my past videos, you know that I reference them quite a bit, because the work that they do is great and important, and they're way more detailed than I ever could be, especially given my limited resources. However, I do think people take their word a little too far as well, because this game is nowhere near as bad as all the talk will have you believe. Now, I don't blame Digital Foundry for this. I think that their video on the PS5 performance is probably still accurate. However, it doesn't paint the whole picture either. Because I can honestly say, as someone who played this on 2 separate screens via the PS5 Pro, it still looked great throughout and I barely had any noticeable issues. Anything in terms of performance was much less notable to me than a lot of games I've spoken about in the past. Were the problems still there? Probably, but it wasn't glaring compared to some other experiences I've had, and I truly believe the framing has been blown out of proportion. In my own personal experience, I've had no crashes nor noticeable frame drops. It ran fairly smoothly as far as I could tell. I mean, I may still have had frames drop and resolution dip down to 1080p or 720 as their video claims, it's just at least not something that stuck out to me anyway. And I was playing this on the PS5 Pro, which apparently, according to them, runs worse at times than the base PS5. Odd, I know, but honestly, I had no real issues. There are also plenty of other games that I've had issues with, namely Jedi Survivor and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Way more so than this game, yet those weren't talked about nearly as much by the masses. And don't get me wrong, those are still great games despite their performance, but they were much more noticeable to me when I played through them, with Survivor almost hindering the experience, hence why I couldn't recommend it at launch. Obviously, everyone has different experiences and such, so that's why you gotta watch different reviews and take everything with a grain of salt, but from my own personal experience at least, yeah, I couldn't recommend it. Metal Gear Solid Delta, on the other hand, is not that egregious. Sure, it's not perfect and it could still use some work, but it's far from one of the worst performing games I've ever played. Now, as for how it performs on the Series X and S, I think that might be a different story. Since I don't have a copy of it on any other console, I can't confirm or deny how it runs there, though I'd imagine that if it apparently isn't the smoothest experience on the PS5, it probably isn't on the Series X either, and even more so on its little brother, the Series S. In fact, I'd imagine that the Series S would be holding it back a ton, comparatively speaking. PC, however, I have heard runs well, and so if you are considering what to pick this up on, your safest bet is there, though I doubt you'd regret picking it up on the PS5 or the Series X, because I'm sure both of them work just fine. But if you're still having doubts, maybe just wait for some future patches and for a sale to come through. There honestly isn't a lot else to talk about when it comes to this game and its review, hence why it's probably one of my shortest reviews, but this game is exactly as advertised and what you were likely expecting. It's a super faithful remake, almost one-to-one, and like the original, it's a great time. Understandably, the price is a little steep, being a full-price game that's essentially an upgrade of a 21-year-old game, and your performance may vary depending on your experience and the machine, but I'd still recommend giving this a go either now or at some point during a sale. Just note to block out all the noise and the chatter surrounding this, and I'm almost certain, like me, you'll have one hell of a time.
Darkness and silence through the night. What a thrill. I'm searching